This is Contributing 101, and we'll be going through the process of contributing to open source, the Mobi project, and other projects that are related to that. I prepared some slides, but I never know what the level is of people here and what you're interested in. So after I did my presentation, people can start contributing. I'll be going around and help you out on what you want to be doing. And there's a couple of maintainers here as well that want to help out, at least for a part of the session. Some have a presentation later on, so we'll see how it goes. About me. So I am a contributor to Docker since around version 0.5. I'm a curator and a maintainer of the project, and a member of the Mobi Technical Steering Committee. And previously I was working on PHP. How did I get involved in open source? It was basically, I saw Docker. I thought this is interesting in my current job, but I knew nothing about it. So the best way to find information was on GitHub, and I started going on GitHub, look through issues, look through PRs, look at questions that other people had, and at some point you realize you have more information that people are looking for, so you start to give back, you start to help other people. And that way, I basically started contributing without doing anything else than just being there. So that's also how I want to start as to what is contributing. It's not just code. There's many ways to contribute to open source. And that's also an important thing to realize, because people are hesitant to start contributing or don't know where to start. And that's why we're here. I want to show how to contribute to the projects and where you can help, where you can learn, and what you can add to the projects. So yeah, coming to that, what's needed to contribute? Well, of course, you need 5 years professional experience in Go, a master's degree in computer science, being fluent in English and in speaking and writing, and you've been running Docker in production for 8 years or more. Nah, that's not really the case. So what's really needed? What's really needed is just basic communication skills, or in English, or maybe if you don't speak in English, even Google Translate can help out. We have maintainers in different countries, and usually we figure out a way to get there. You must be willing to help others, because that's what it's all about. It's maintainers, contributors, users, and all together make this work. And yeah, if you want to contribute to Docker, it usually helps if you use Docker. But even that is not always needed. Maybe you didn't use Docker before, you're reading documentation, and you need more help, or you think help is needed on the documentation. Could be something. So, have you contributed before? Let me ask you that. Did everyone here ever open a pull request or contribute something? So that's a couple. Did everyone open an issue, a bug report, or... Yep, there's a couple. Did you go on the forums or maybe the community Slack and chat with other people? And if you did so, basically you're already contributing, because that's what it's all about. As I said, it's not coding all. There's many ways to contribute, and all those make up for the whole open source to work. Because contributing isn't coding. Reporting issues, as I said, opening feature requests, that's contributing already. Sometimes that's even more important than doing the actual code, because if maintainers or contributors know what people are looking for, or things that are missing, or maybe a bug that's there, and you are that one person that's able to reproduce the bug, that's already halfway down to fixing the bug. Reading other people's issues and feature requests helps. Many times people open an issue as to, I want this feature, and they already gave it some thought and thought, this is the way to implement it. But it works for them, but it may not be working for you or other people. And what we need there is the additional information. How do you want to use this feature, and what are you actually looking for? What's the problem? Maybe you were just starting with Docker and you read the documentation and you didn't understand a thing. Opening an issue about that works. The documentation team will understand that things are not clear. Maybe another user sees the issue being opened and thinks, yes, I wrote a bit of information about this, maybe I can contribute this. So even without doing the work yourself, just adding the information is already very helpful. Could be you're already a bit playing with Go or with the code, or maybe you're learning Go and you see pull requests being opened. You can help review, because everyone is open to review pull requests. It's not just maintainers, existing contributors, just anyone. And it's how I started as well, as to I didn't know anything about Go. I was interested in what was being added to the code base, and I started looking around as to what's being added. And it may look daunting, because you think there's all these smart kids working on this code, and I don't know anything about it. But maybe there's this tiny bit you know, and you could add that information, and it helps. And you'll be surprised that there's many things that the maintainers don't know or are not aware of. Just adding that is very helpful. And of course, just interact with the community. Help other people on Stack Overflow, on the community forums, on Slack. It helps. So how does open source work? I cannot speak for all open source projects. I know how it works for the Docker projects and Moby projects, and generally there's multiple types of users. There's contributors, could be anyone. You can open a pull request, you're a contributor. In the Moby projects, we have curators that are people that help out with triage. I get back to that. And there's maintainers. And maintainers are basically the housekeepers of the project. They started contributing, were around for a longer time, and basically they know the code base, they know how to help people. And yeah, for that reason, because they were around for a longer time, they became a maintainer at some point. Important bit of maintainers is to be there. And it's not a one-time contributor that comes around, opens a pull request, and heads out. It's more important for someone to become a maintainer because that person has been around for a longer time. So that's also how maintainers are added. Maintainers are added by voting on people. Existing maintainers can propose someone to be added as a maintainer because they saw that person being helpful and knowing the code base. And at some point they became a maintainer. And basically before they were officially a maintainer, they usually already were. So let's start with the first bit. It's how many people get started. It's contributing to the documentation. It's usually people start working with Docker, read the documentation, see something, and don't understand how it works. So, or maybe they think there's some information missing, and I may be willing to write that. So for the documentation, it's quite easy, actually. We made it easy to not know too much about Git or what is used. On every page of the Docker documentation, you find a request for doc changes button and an edit this page button. I'll show that in a bit. But also, if you, like I said, if you have suggestions or feedback in general as to these are things that could be improved, you can also open an issue on GitHub directly. And when doing so, please have a look around if there's an existing issue already, because there's many duplicates. And if you're thinking of adding a big piece of information to the documentation, it's usually better to first open an issue, a ticket on GitHub, to describe what you want to be adding, because maybe it's out of scope for the documentation. If you want to do so, you can also do so directly on Slack, because on the community Slack, there's a docs channel, and you can find the documentation maintainers there. But one of the other channels usually work, and if you go, for example, to the Moby project channel, there's maintainers there, and they can bring you in touch with the documentation team. So, how does it work? Let me show. Because the docs is quite easy, actually. Hope this is readable. Yes. So, for example, you're on a page in the documentation, and you think this needs some improvement. On the right side of the page, you'll find two buttons. One is to edit the page, and then one is to request doc changes. And if you have a GitHub account, you can, from those buttons, either open a ticket, type what you think is needed to improve, or you can open a pull request. In this case, I noticed that, let's go back. On Ubuntu, it mentioned that Artful is supported, but Bionic is not yet supported. But actually it is, because the latest Edge version of Docker supports Bionic. So maybe we should have that fixed. So I can either open an issue and describe this needs to be modified, or I can open a pull request. And as you can see, you open the pull request, or you click on the button, and it opens an editor to edit the file that you're reading. Let's change this. And once we added a description, it opens a template for creating a pull request. So it's not that hard. You can review your changes and open your pull request. There we go. Okay, so what's next? Well, this pull request is here. What's going to happen with this? Now it's a bit of waiting. It needs to be reviewed. There needs to be a docs maintainer that says, yeah, this looks good or it isn't right. So for this, I don't think there's a docs maintainer around, so we'd have to wait and hope that it gets reviewed. If you don't see any action, usually it's okay to ping one of the maintainers, and pinging means basically just leave a comment. I see Tibor reviewed it. And I asked the docs maintainer to have a look.
So here's the question, why do you know whom to ping?
Why I use ping?
No, why do you know whom to ping?
Okay, that's a good one. In this case, I think they're already automatically assigned for the docs. On the other repositories, I will show that there's a maintainers file showing who are the maintainers, so who you can ping in case your PR gets stuck. Okay, so that's for documentation. Any questions about this? Responses? Yes. Sorry, it's hard to hear. Why I? Oh, I think it actually, that's a good question. Does it automatically fork? Do you know? It does? Yeah, so if you click that button, it will automatically create a fork of the repository under your own name. And if you created that patch, so you made the changes, it creates a branch of that and then continues to opening a pull request.
The only downside of the patch, the branch name is patch-1, which is...
Yes, it automatically, I think you can change it actually. If you open the pull request, I think it gives an option to rename the branch as well. But usually it's okay. Often for the docs, it's okay to just create the branch with patch 1. They're used to that, and they want to keep it very low or very easy to start contributing. In the past, we followed the same rules as for code, which is a bit more complicated. But we didn't want to keep that up, and we wanted to make it easier to contribute. Any other questions? Nothing? Okay, let's continue. Because there's more ways to help out. Issue triage is something that I did a lot over the years. So what is issue triage? Basically, it's adding more information to tickets that are open to make it easier to find them, to make sure that they are complete, and by doing so, to make sure that an issue is easier to resolve or goes in any direction, which could be that it closes, or that it is being worked on, or turns into a pull request. It's a lot of work. To make this a bit more organized, at the Moby project, we work with a labeling system. So on GitHub, you can add labels to issues and pull requests. And we defined a set of labels that we're using to categorize issues. Okay, that doesn't work. There we go. To categorize the issues and to make sure in what state an issue is or what type of issue it is. There's a document describing these labels and also describes what's needed for triage. Basically comes down to make sure that all the information is there. In case of Docker, it is that we're looking for, if you're reporting a bug, it's very important to know what version you're running, but also what platform you're running on and what distro or what distro version. All that information is basically already enclosed in the output of Docker version and Docker info. And even though we request that information in the issue template on GitHub, many people are sometimes lazy, don't provide all the information, and it takes a bit of asking. And basically those steps can be done by anyone. If you see an issue being opened and you see that the information is very incomplete, you can already start out helping to get that information there. If you see an issue and the steps to reproduce are not very clear, you can ask for more information to describe exactly what steps are needed to reproduce the issue. And maybe you are able to reproduce, and if you're able to reproduce, you can add your information to the issue, which gives a signal to maintainers or contributors as to, okay, if there's multiple people running into this issue, it's most likely something that needs to be focused on. So that's the basic information. In addition, we have the labels, as I said. So we classify labels in what kind of issue is it? Is it a bug? Is it an enhancement request? Is it a feature request? Could also be a question. And basically, GitHub is, for the Moby repository, is not really the best place to ask questions. We have the forums and the Slack channel for that. But sometimes someone opens a question and it's easy to answer, and it's usually better to answer the question there because other people may arrive on GitHub and see the issue, and if they find the answer directly, that does the job. In addition to what kind of issue it is, we also, because Docker got quite complex over the years, different areas, we classify the issue in areas. So is it related to networking? Is it related to swarm mode? Or is it related to a volume? So we add those labels there as well. And I can show. So with those labels, it becomes a lot easier to find in what area something is, and if it's a bug or a feature request, because they get treated in a different way. I mean, if it's a bug, it is something that needs to be looked into. Is there a bug fix? Is it reproducible? If it's a feature request, then usually it's important to get more information about the feature request itself. As to someone wants a specific feature, is that person the only one? Or is there many people that want that feature? And at some point, if we have enough information, it usually gets discussed in a maintainers meeting. We organize a weekly maintainers meeting, discuss features that people are looking for, and see if the design that they came up with matches what we generally have. If we like it, we can leave a comment on the issue, and people can start working on it, or maybe there's a maintainer that starts working on it. But it's usually open for anyone to start working on those if we agree on the design. So we still have quite a few feature requests open. If there's something you are missing in Docker and think this is something that needs to be added, leave a comment there, because it also helps to know that there's more people looking for something to focus on. Okay, so this is what I went through. Like I said, feature requests, very important to get all the information there, especially what is the use case you have in mind. As I mentioned earlier, many people open a feature request and already have the whole feature in mind. It's not always the right solution. We're more looking for what's the problem you're trying to solve than a solution already, and keep our minds open as to maybe there's a different way to get this done. And as always, it's difficult to say no, but sometimes it's the best answer. Feature requests can vary widely, and sometimes they're really out of scope for the project. Also, if we're not sure about a feature, the best answer sometimes is no, because there's this saying, no is temporary, yes is forever, which basically means if we would have accepted a feature, we're stuck with it forever because we have to maintain it. And maybe if it was a bad decision, that could be adding a lot to maintain. So sometimes we say, okay, no for now, and we can revisit if we think at the later stage it may be a good feature after all. But sometimes it's better to say no for now than to say yes and be stuck with it. Okay, after we've seen documentation, issues, and triage, it's also about code. So reviewing and contributing code, because it's not just contributing the code, it's also the review process. We have a document describing our review process. I can show it later on as well. We have a couple of bots that help us do so. They will label both issues but also PRs with the right stage that they are in. And we have a weekly maintainers meeting in which we try to review some PRs that may need more eyes, design discussions that are needed. And you can start with that as well. I mean, anyone is allowed to review code. That's what open source is about. When you're doing so, you will get a bit of a feel as to how the review procedure works. Learn about some acronyms we use, like LGTM, LGTU, and please take another look, which is PTAL. But also, if you see a review in process and you think, that's not really the way I would have done it, or maybe I don't like this feature, or it should be done differently, let yourself know. I mean, it's not just the maintainers making the decision. It's anyone that can contribute to that process. So in general, just participate. I mean, more eyes is always better code and makes for better decisions. So how does the review procedure work? Let's have a look at the PR. Okay, we have separate stages that a PR can be in. And the procedure is that we start a PR in the triage stage. At that point, a maintainer decides, is it a PR that needs a design review? Is it really a user-facing change? Or is it just, for example, a bug fix, in which case it can go through code review? Let's see, I can make that clear. So the PR goes from each stage to the next. And so after the design has been agreed on, the PR can go to a code review. After that, it could either need documentation or it is ready to merge. And then it goes to the status merge. So what's needed to move it between those stages? And that's basically the review process. So the PR is open, reviewers have a look at it, and if you're a maintainer, you can leave your LGTM, which means looks good to me, which basically means I tested the code, I had a look at the code, and I'm okay with these changes. In this case, there's a PR that needs some design review. This is actually a follow-up of an existing PR, and we're not sure about this feature. At which point I also decided to add it for the next maintainers meeting. It's not going to be this week, so next week there's a maintainers meeting, and I want to have more eyes on this feature because there are some concerns about the design. In some cases, it's a documentation change because there's some documentation in the repository as well. In this case, it's about how to write tests for the project. And in that case, we can skip the code review changes, the design review changes, and it goes directly to docs review. And after it's being reviewed, it can be merged. So how to find something to work on? That's a tricky question. As I mentioned, we have the triage process in which we classify issues. If it's a bug, it's usually always good to work on. If it's a feature request, then it depends. Maybe there's no consensus yet as to if we want a feature. In that case, it's always good to first go to, for example, Slack or ask on the issue if the maintainers agree with the feature before you start coding. In general, if you open a pull request, try to keep it small. Smaller PRs, less changes are usually faster to move, faster to get merged, and overall it's better to keep them focused, which just works better. So, how to go around this? I'm not sure if I have a ticket to work on to open, but there's a couple of things to keep in mind when coding, when adding code changes to the Moby project. So what's needed? Basically, what's needed to work on the project is you need to have Git installed to check out the code, an editor, of course, and it works best if you have Docker installed because the whole build process of Docker is running inside Docker. If you have forked the repository, and I can show through that process if anyone wants to, but I have my clone of Docker here, and I set up my remotes. Is this big enough, actually? So I have two remotes here in Git. Origin, which is pointing to my fork of Docker, or the Moby repository, and upstream, which is the upstream Moby repository. So this is a tricky one because we renamed the project to Moby when the Moby project was created, but the Go code is still expecting it to be called Docker, which is an intermediate state we're in, and that's going to be changing at some point, but currently I still clone it as Docker. And if you're familiar with Go, you know that the path is important in this to make this work. So how to build Docker? Because basically you want to be building the code, and if you make a code change, you want to see it work. First of all, if I open a pull request, it's best to open a branch. So I opened a new branch, and now I can start making changes if I want to. I have a local editor here to work on the code. Let's get this bigger. And let me see what's something to change. Let's keep it very simple. Just making a text change here. So I modify this. Doesn't really matter right now. Now, how to build the code. To build the code, you run a Docker in Docker. And there's a make command to build a build container, mount your code in it, and build Docker inside that container. Inside that container, I can see it working, I can see the daemon running, and I can test my code changes. Yep. Okay. It's still visible? Yeah. Okay, so in this case, I type make, I type bind dir, which means that I bind my local source as a bind mounted volume in the build container, make the binary, and open a shell inside that container. Let's see how it works. Apparently my cache was empty. So this is gonna take a bit. I'm not sure we want to wait, right? Let me go to the contributing section. Okay, so there's a lot of information on the repository itself about where to report issues, how to contribute, and there is a documentation section inside the docs folder that describes the whole procedure. There's a couple of things to take into account when you open a pull request, and one of them is that you need to sign off your commit, which basically is a one line at the end of your commit message saying your name and your email address, and which indicates that you agreed on contributing the code and that you obtained it legally and that you're allowed to add the code. There's a check for that, and if you're missing that sign-off, the bot will automatically invalidate your pull request and show that it's not right. Let's see if we have some invalid ones. Here's one. So if you made a mistake, so if you skipped signing off, there's actually a bot that shows the exact command you can use to fix the issue. But if you set up your Git correctly, you can automatically sign off your commit by adding the -s command when you commit your changes. This is still running. That's a pity. Going. Okay, so how to find what to work on. Maybe that's a better start. So as I mentioned, there's bugs. It's always good to work on. And some issues that are already there are classified with experience labels. So if you're a beginner, so never worked with Go or never worked on the code base, look for a beginner issue. There's a couple still open, and those can be worked on at any time. So if you think I'm looking for something easy to start with, look for issues that are labeled with the beginner label. And of course, there's intermediate and expert labels for more advanced features or more bigger changes. Usually it's good to, if you're working on those, to discuss with the maintainers if it's okay to work on or if your approach is right. Can I show something? No, it's taking too long. Okay, I can continue this later on, but I would like to see if there's people that want to start contributing during this session and what you want to be working on. I'll be going around later on, and we can do more one-on-one things, because it depends a bit what you want to be working on. If you want to work on things for the Moby project or Docker, there's not just a Moby repository. Moby consists of various projects. Containerd is integrated. BuildKit is now integrated into Docker. There's a Docker CLI. And you can find a list of projects that are part of the Moby project on the website. But of course, if you have any questions about that, you can ask them to me as well. I think I'm going to be wrapping up for now. Are there any questions at this point? Okay, be done for now.
So I guess we have a couple of people from Docker sitting in the front, and Sebastian. So if you have any things you'd like to start contributing on, I think just raise your hand, and one of us from the Docker team will come and try to help out. Thanks, everyone.